Welcome to part 2 of our Scalability and the FileMaker platform. Now in our part 1 video, we defined that scalability is the ability for a FileMaker server to successfully host a FileMaker solution to many users simultaneously while maintaining an acceptable level of performance. And what does that mean? It means that as we add a lot of users to the FileMaker server, that the user experience continues to be quick and snappy. Now in part 2 of this video, I'm going to give you some additional tips and tricks to help make your solution scalable for a larger group of users. And some of these tips and tricks are now only possible with the FileMaker 13 platform. Now first off, I want to thank some of the folks over at Apple Corporate for their positive feedback about our part 1 video. Some of the employees over at Apple Inc. actually took some of our techniques discussed in part 1, and some of them have actually seen the preview of this part 2 movie and have already built into their own solution the things that we're going to show you here in this part 2 movie, and they report back that their FileMaker 13 solutions are now radically faster than they were with FileMaker 12. So once again, thanks to some of the staff at Apple for reviewing our content and validating the results. So first off, when a user logs into a hosted FileMaker solution, before a startup script can run, or before FileMaker can execute the file preferences under the File Options menu here, where the developer has specified switch to layout, the FileMaker client will automatically open the layout that was last viewed by the user when the database was closed, when the file was being run as a single user file. So let me say that one more time. It's a bit of an abstract concept. The last time the file was being run as a single user file, i.e. it wasn't running on the FileMaker server, the last layout that was visited by the user who was running the file as a single user file, and then they close the file, that layout will be loaded as the first layout they get as they log into the file before the startup script can run and before the switch to layout command can be executed. Now this is just a default behavior in FileMaker, and 99% of the time people never see this happen. But if you have a slow internet connection, some users will report that they saw some strange layout flash in front of them. It could even be a secret report or some sort of secure layout they're not even supposed to have access to. So keep in mind that if there's a lot of graphics on that layout, that the users are going to have to download all this material across their slow internet connection even before the startup scripts get going or that switch to layout command is executed. This can waste a ton of time, and you're wasting the patience of the user. So one of the keys to make sure your database runs quickly is that before you host the solution, make sure that you navigate to a completely blank layout. Make sure the layout has a neutral color in it with no graphics and no fields. It's a completely blank layout. And then close the database. Then take the database up to the server and host it. This will ensure that as the users are opening the databases remotely, they will load a blank layout, which will be very quick. It will speed their load and minimize the delay for them to get to their first screen. Now tip number 2 I want to talk about is to minimize the number of objects on the screens that you give the users, especially for layouts where the users are accessing those layouts remotely, especially if those connections are across the wide area network. And when I mean by wide area network, I'm saying the internet. So if you have users who are accessing a database and your server is, say, on the East Coast or the West Coast of the United States, and the users are on the other side of the continental United States, or maybe they're in Europe, or maybe they're halfway around the globe, you definitely want to make sure that the layouts that those people are accessing have the least number of objects on screen. And what do we mean by objects? Here you can see a field and a field label. Each of these objects in FileMaker is described by a block of XML, as you can see. Now there's XML for every object on a FileMaker layout. It's definitely inside the application, but for a vast majority of users, you're never going to see this. You have to be a pretty advanced developer to get under the hood to even see this stuff. That being said, it's definitely there. And for FileMaker Pro or Go or even WebDirect to render these objects on screen, this XML has to be pushed down through the network to the client for it to be displayed. Now, of course, the more objects you have on screen, the more blocks of XML that have to be pushed down through the network to the client. So of course, the whole idea is to minimize the amount of data going from the server across the network to the client. So minimize the objects on screen. Minimize the number of fields. Minimize the number of graphics. The fewer items you have on screen, the fewer blocks of XML that have to go across the network. So now that we've decided that we want to minimize the number of objects on the layout, there are some new specific things that we can do in FileMaker 13 that can greatly improve the performance and the load times of our layouts for our users as they log in to our FileMaker solutions. Now, my team develops and maintains FM Starting Point, which is the free starter solution that's available at fmstartingpoint.com. Now, this is a very popular starter solution, and approximately 100 people every day download this solution. Now, for the release of FM Starting Point 4, back around February of 2014, we went and performed all these optimizations to make FM Starting Point run as fast as possible. And what were the results? Well, they're the same results that the folks at Apple saw when they made the same optimizations to their databases. In a lot of cases, your databases will download and run as much as 200% faster, as opposed to a database that was running in FileMaker 12. How is this even possible? Well, let me show you. This is an application that allows me to measure the bandwidth between FileMaker Server and a FileMaker client like FileMaker Go or Pro. Now, I have a copy of FM Starting Point, and I have put it up on my FileMaker 13 server. And I've gone ahead and logged on to FM Starting Point with my copy of FileMaker Pro 13. We're going to use Wireshark to measure the bandwidth from the main menu right here to the contacts data entry screen right here. This is a simple process of jumping layouts, which is what we want to do. Now, I am in FileMaker Pro right now, but that is where we have to make all of our changes. So Wireshark is going to measure the bandwidth from here to here. So first off, I'm on a layout here. This is a layout that we created in FileMaker 12. So like most users, if you really want to customize your layouts in FileMaker 12, you end up using the classic themes to meet your particular needs. This is pretty common. At the FileMaker Developers Conference in 2013, when asked for a show of hands, a vast majority of the users were using the classic themes to customize their layouts just the way they wanted. This is because themes in FileMaker 12 could not be customized and saved. The problem with using the classic theme is for every object on a layout, there is a complete set of descriptive CSS that tells FileMaker how to draw that object, and this is really wasteful. The idea is to have these objects that are very similar share the same description, and that is what we can do by sharing a custom style. What I'm going to do is walk you through how we made this layout twice as fast. So first off, I'm going to create a new window. Now, I'm still on this contacts layout, and I don't want to mess it up. So I'm going to go ahead and say Layout, Duplicate Layout. Next, I'm going to change the theme for this layout. I can do that by going up to Layout, Change Theme. Now, the themes under Aspire are all new to FileMaker 13. This is a completely new family of themes that are part of FileMaker 13. I'm going to select Vibrant because this is kind of cool, and it reminds me of the layout that we were using previously. And I look at this, and it's not too horrible, but it is really different than what I had before. And so I asked one of my engineers that is new on the team to sit down, and he spent about half a day retooling this layout to make it look like the original design. Because I kind of like the original layout over here. I thought it looked a little nicer, and I said, can't you take this and tweak it and customize it. So he went into layout mode, and he actually went over here and went under data and the appearance panel and made all sorts of adjustments and customizations and all sorts of little tweaks and things. And what he would do is he would take an object like this, he would go into style, and after adjusting it the way he wanted, and he would say this is going to be a new style. And he would say this is going to be FM starting point standard edit box, and say okay. Now that's going to be a save style, and now that's part of this theme, which is part of this layout now. Now that has its own block of CSS. Now I can click on these other similar objects over here that still have their own block of CSS. I'm going to select all these over here, all these everywhere over here, and I'm going to tell them to use the standard saved style. So we have a shared style. They're all sharing the same style instead of them having their own block of descriptive CSS. They are all sharing the same block. And suddenly this layout is already much lighter. Now it was radically transformed when I converted it to the vibrant theme under the hood, but we wanted to customize it with a shared style so it had a design that my team approved of. Instead of styling each item individually and giving it its own complete set of CSS, we want to create a shared style. So what we ended up with after about a half a day of work was a layout that looked like this. So here you can see what we have is a layout that looks almost identical. The difference is this layout right here is the original using the classic theme. But this layout right here, we have created all of the shared styles between the fields here, and it has its own custom theme. So this layout right here is much lighter, and that is the critical piece of knowledge that I am trying to explain, and I hope that you understand, that you can take away and employ into your own solution. So if you look right here at these labels, you can see that these labels share their own shared style. If you look at these buttons across the top, they share a shared style. So you get the idea that you have shared styles between similar objects. So what was the difference in bandwidth between this layout in Classic and this layout with a custom theme? This layout to push to download one time as we navigate from home was 850 kilobytes of information, or almost a megabyte of information. And that's quite a bit for a single layout. By creating a custom theme for the layout and shared styles, the single process of going from the home layout to the contacts layout was reduced to 425 kilobytes, or about half the original size, which may translate to about twice the speed of the original. Depends on network conditions, but you may get twice the speed. So we thought that was really an amazing improvement. So as a side note, we also decided that since we took a FileMaker design and we were monkeying with it quite a bit, what if we took a FileMaker design and just left it unaltered? And we did that too. We actually went to this layout over here, and this one here is based upon the stone theme, and it is unaltered. Of course, from theme to theme, the weight will change somewhat, and the cost from going home to the contacts data entry layout went down to 225 kilobytes. So we go from 850 to 425, which is a huge improvement, and the interface looks almost identical. And if you're willing to give up on your custom design entirely, you can cut the design down in half again. So now I have showed you how much you can save if you set up your own customized style and shared themes. Let me explain to you a little bit more about how this works. First off, if you click into an object and make customized changes for that individual object, then you are creating additional level of CSS that is local to that object. This is called a local override for the CSS. Now this is a bit technical, but effectively what you're doing is creating a whole lot of extra work, And the downside is that FileMaker has to push that down from FileMaker Server when a user accesses that object. So try to minimize making individual customizations to objects. If you're going to make individual customizations, try to take that object, go to Style, and save the style or create a new style. This allows those object attributes to be saved at the layout level and to be shared with other objects on the layout without additional penalty. Another hot tip that you should consider is that the Format Painter tool up here in the corner should be avoided at all costs if you're building a layout for deployment on WebDirect. And that's because of the way the Format Painter tool works. Say, for example, that the department field has a style on it that you want to use on other fields. Well, historically in FileMaker, you would click the Format Painter tool, and it's going to remember the settings for this object. Now, the settings that you would think it would remember would be that the department field had the shared style main field. If I click over here and paint the primary address right here, you'll notice that the indicator has gone red right here. This is because the Format Painter tool did not actually copy, as you would expect, from the department to the primary street. The Format Painter tool took the department settings and copied the shared style down to the primary address, but copied it and made it unique to the address 1 field. It's a bit of an abstract concept, but the whole idea of this process that we've been going through is to make sure that all the objects in here are sharing the same block of CSS, and the bottom line is that the Format Painter tool does not preserve the shared style. It should have preserved it from the department field to the primary street, but it didn't do that. It actually took the information from the shared style and copied it in to a local override for the primary street, which basically creates a whole additional block of CSS under the hood in this layout. Now, it looks fine on screen, and the user will never know what's happened, and the developer, if they're not paying attention, will have no idea what's gone on. But if you use the Format Painter and affect enough fields under the hood, you're going to cause a performance penalty when rendering this layout. FileMaker is aware of this limitation, and their official recommendation is, as I described before, is to actually select the fields that you want to have use a shared style, and then manually select the style from the Style panel in the inspector. I want to take a quick moment and address the issue of having a custom style and shared styles on a layout while using a solution in a hybrid environment. And what I mean by this, I'm talking about an environment where some users are using FileMaker Pro 13 and some users are using FileMaker 12 products. Now, of course, strictly speaking, FileMaker 12 and FileMaker 13 share the same file format. So FileMaker 12 can open FileMaker 13 files, and FileMaker 13 can open FileMaker 12 files. And they can actually open the same files on the FileMaker server at the same time. But that can lead to some interesting situations when you start incorporating FileMaker 13 specific features into your solution and then going back and opening that solution in FileMaker 12. Custom themes and custom styles are unique to FileMaker 13, and FileMaker 12 does not know how to recognize them. This is the layout that we previously created in FileMaker 13 with the customized theme RCC Vibrant. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and open this with FileMaker 12 on my machine. I'm opening up the same database to the same layout. I actually am in FileMaker 12 right here, as you can see, and it's generally rendering okay. But that will not happen in all situations. And as you can see right here, there are some differences in certain functionality in the layout. In this case, the labels here are not rendering correctly, and this cannot be corrected for FileMaker 12 users. Over here, you can see in FileMaker 13 that it is rendering the labels correctly. But over here, in 12, we have a fairly minor defect, but it can't really be corrected for FileMaker 12 users without negatively affecting the 13 users. the key point to understand is that you can open a layout with a custom theme in FileMaker 12, but it may not render the layout correctly. If you go so far as to actually go into layout mode in FileMaker 12 with a layout set with a custom theme, then you're really asking for trouble, because FileMaker 12 does not understand custom themes or shared styles. In fact, if you go up under Layout and down to Change Theme, the custom theme that we defined, RCC Vibrant, is not even displayed. FileMaker 12 does not know what to do. So it's going to default back to what it knows, which is cool gray in FileMaker 12. Now in this situation, the variations between 12 and 13 are not too bad, but in a lot of cases, 12 is going to have a much more serious allergic reaction to what we're going to see. You run the risk of breaking objects in the layout to the point where they will not work, and that is especially true if you're one of the developers who manually went under the hood in FileMaker 12 and customized the CSS on your own. That activity was not approved by FileMaker Incorporated and was not an approved modification to a FileMaker database. And it's one of those situations where if you've been messing around under the hood with CSS to a FileMaker file, and you take that FileMaker file up to FileMaker 13, things may get real exciting, because FileMaker 13 assumes that the CSS is going to exist in a very specific format. So if you've been playing under the hood, behind the scenes, in a non-approved fashion in your FileMaker file, you may see unexpected or aberrant behavior. And this is why FileMaker Incorporated specifically warned users against hacking the CSS in FileMaker 12. So FileMaker's general guidance on this topic is that if you're going to have users accessing layouts in a hybrid environment, make sure the layouts that are accessed by FileMaker 12 users do not contain custom themes and custom styles. Of course, if you think about this, that makes sense. Now, a couple of long-standing recommendations I want to remind you of. First off, sticking large images on your layouts is generally not recommended. So if you have a beautiful picture of Hawaii, or of a race car, or maybe a fighter plane, something like that you think is really cool that you could put in the background, that's going to cause a lot of overhead and bandwidth on your network connection, and that's going to really penalize the performance. It is recommended not to use a lot of images. Using the FileMaker toolset is the preferred method for creating buttons, as opposed to creating images in Photoshop and copying and pasting those buttons or importing them into FileMaker Pro. So I think that wraps things up. I appreciate everyone watching this video. Be sure to pass the link on to your friends and subscribe to our channel here at FileMakerVideos.com. Also be on the lookout for our training series on FileMaker Go 13. We're going to get into the ins and outs of both of these products, more than just optimization. There's a lot of moving pieces with both these technologies, so these training series will be very valuable for those people building solutions. I also want to thank the team at FileMaker, both the product management team and the engineering team, for their advice and encouragement in the production of this video. And so for the team here at RC Consulting, I'm Richard Carlton, and I'll see you next time.